Although the rural sector's anger over the fringe benefits tax legislation is unlikely to be expressed in this manner, actions of civil disobedience seem certain. According to the National Party, the tax will escalate farm cost inflation by 40%, will cut net farm income by 5%, will cost the average farmer $2,600 per annum, and will nationally take $150 million from farmers' pockets. Farm groups are advising farmers not to supply taxation information to the government to thwart the legislation's introduction, and that sort of measure seems certain to be part of the Cockies' protest strategy.
If the law makes pretty criminals out of us, then it's a silly law. Older and wiser heads than mine have said that you can't enforce a bad law. I just hope that proves to be the case now.
Scone District grazier Peter Bishop is incensed by the legislation, although he agrees with the concept of taxing the lurks and perks enjoyed by high-income earners. Looking around the parched Hunter, though, it's hard to see too many wealthy squatters these days. Had the season been kinder, this should have been a paddock of knee-high oats and lucerne, but it's been very dry. In fact, here in the Upper Hunter, 6 of the last 7 seasons have been drought declared. The insidious thing about the fringe benefits tax is that it doesn't take into account this. Regardless of whether a farmer has an income or has no income, the fringe benefits tax will have to be paid.
It's supposed to apply to people who are well-to-do. It's supposed to get the fringe benefits from the fat cats, but on the land it's going to hit people that haven't got any money.
Specifically, the fringe benefits tax will hit only those farmers who can afford to accommodate farm hands on the property, although by the Taxation Department's own guidelines, that will be a very wide and heavy net. According to this taxation guide, the fringe benefits tax on employer-provided housing will be derived from a statutory formula, which in turn will be based on the Miners' Award of 1984, roughly $650 a week. Now, under this formula, this house will be worth rental value $130 a week. Not bad if you're a miner or you live and work in the city. But consider this, the Rural Workers' Award is only $238 a week. Take away the rent, you've only got $108.
If you don't have somebody in the cottage, then you don't pay the tax. But as soon as you give someone a job, you pay the tax, and it becomes a tax on jobs. And the government keeps saying that their priorities are jobs, jobs and more jobs, and they've introduced a tax on jobs, and it will result in less jobs.
Peter Bishop is a director and employee of a private family farm company and says the tax will hit him and others like him particularly hard.
Well, I live in a house that's owned by the company, so I'll have to pay tax on my own house. The company will have to pay tax on the house that it provides for me. And because the meals are prepared on the employer's premises, which is my house, then I'll have to pay tax on the meals that I eat. And I've got 5 kids. And let's say that on average there's 3.5 people living in the house and eating in the house each day. That's under this legislation, that's deemed to be $21 worth of meals that are taxable. That's $10 a day tax I'd have to pay. That's $3,500 a year tax on my meals, as well as the tax on my house. That's how it affects me.
People might say, OK, you're a big company, perhaps you can wear it. What about the average farmer that's a family farm, a father and a son? How will it affect them?
If the farmer owns his own house, if he's a sole trader, he doesn't pay fringe benefits tax until his son turns up. If he pays his son to work for him, then he then has to pay fringe benefits tax on the rent that he doesn't charge his son and the food that he supplies his son. It's got to the absurd stage.
As with practically every government taxation act, loopholes and escape routes can be found, and the advice of leading Sydney economist Don Stammer, is for farmers to look for them.
But it does look as though it will now be in the interests of some farmers, in fact, to charge their employees for the house, for the vegetables, for the milk, and in fact pay the employee more in the form of wages. Every farmer should look at what his own accountant would say, but for most farmers it will now be sensible for them to pay higher wages and charge a little more for the house, for the milk, eggs and whatever.
I put that same proposition to Peter Bishop, and he replied by saying that all it would do would be to take money from the farm hand as well as the employer.
If you pay the rural worker the amount of the rent and have him pay it back to you as rent, then you don't have to pay fringe benefits tax as an employer. But your workers' compensation goes up and the employee's tax goes up by the amount of the rent. So he actually moves back by the amount of tax he has to pay on the extra money he gets for the rent.
And you're paying more in workers' compensation, so both lose.
Yeah.
Do you find it hard to understand that this is happening, especially at a time such as this when rural Australia is really facing a crisis?
Well, we're in a drought at the moment. We're officially declared a drought. And over the last 7 years, we've been declared a drought 6 times. We're in a loss situation. But this tax is going to have to be paid whether we're in a profit or a loss situation. It doesn't matter. We have to pay the tax anyway. I think it's absolutely ridiculous.
More than 600 patrons were enjoying a games day in the club's main auditorium when the fire alert was sounded. The blaze broke out in a second-floor storeroom which housed cleaning equipment when sparks from a welding gun ignited a spill of flammable liquid. 4 fire units from Newcastle, Hamilton and Cooks Hill attended the blaze. The storeroom was completely gutted and the main auditorium suffered extensive smoke damage. It was more than 2 hours before the smoke cleared and patrons were able to enter the auditorium again. Club management today commended the patrons for leaving the club without panic.
Flag ran past and sang out fire, and then we told to get out and we looked up and seen the smoke and breaking of the glass, and that's all. And we had to come out. Told us to get out as quick as possible.
Quietly.
The residents of Bulahdelah say that it's this stretch of the Pacific Highway, notorious in the past for traffic accidents, that's causing all the problems. The state government's recent decision to cut free bus travel for some students has resulted in the majority of children attending the nearby schools to seek other methods of transport, which include private cars, cycling and walking. Bulahdelah Public School provides education for infants to high school students. Most have to cross the highway, dodging traffic including semi-trailers, to reach the school grounds. And that's the main worry for anxious parents. In fact, Joanne Barry has collected more than 300 signatures, seeking help for what she describes as a potential traffic danger zone.
Well, we could have some statistics on our hands, like there could be, like anybody's child could get run over crossing the highway.
The matter has been brought before the Great Lakes Shire Council's Traffic Advisory Committee. The Shire engineer Frank Rochford says that the current number of pedestrians crossing the highway does not meet the criteria to warrant a public crossing, and believes that its installation could do more harm than good.
Yes, to provide a crossing near the school, where the children are crossing at the moment, would be more dangerous than to leave it as it is now. Because as I say, the children just regard the crossing as their territory and they walk out without due regard to the oncoming traffic. Council's involvement is on the advisory board of the Traffic Advisory Committee, and we did agree at that committee meeting that provision of a crossing wasn't feasible in Bulahdelah.
Are you saying that the council will not build a pedestrian crossing across the highway?
Council's not doing it, no, and the council wouldn't be doing it anyway, but I would say now the department doesn't intend to put one there either.
But council has blocked that from going to the Department of Main Roads.
No, council agreed with the Department of Main Roads at the Traffic Advisory Committee meeting that it wasn't feasible to put one in.
Small businesses have been accused by the Treasurer, Paul Keating, of not pulling their weight for the economic recovery of Australia. Proprietors, however, say they are weighed down by government licensing charges, taxes and high wages. In the Hunter, anger and desperation has led to action. The formation of a group known as the Hunter Valley Small Business Proprietors. The group intends to fight the planned fringe benefits tax and the National Superannuation Scheme.
Why should an employer pay tax on a concession that an employee is getting? The person that's getting the benefit should be the person that's going to pay for the benefit. It's simple. I mean, this is the first time in history, but the government doesn't want to tackle the unions. They don't want to tackle the masses. They say there's a limited amount of employers, there's masses of employees. Politically, it's better to attack the employers.
The fringe benefits tax has also been criticised by the Livestock and Grain Producers Association. The association says up to 15,000 jobs will be lost in the farming sector if the government goes ahead with the tax. The LGPA says it will cost the farmers $2,000 per employee, and for that cost to be covered, 1 in 7 employees would have to be sacked. The association says even the small-scale farmer will be affected.
If the farmer owns his own house, if he's a sole trader, he doesn't pay fringe benefits tax until his son turns up. If he pays his son to work for him, then he has to pay fringe benefits tax on the rent that he doesn't charge his son and the food that he supplies his son.
These old cars represent a lifelong hobby for the owner of the Veteran Car Museum at Foster. 160 vehicles are included in the collection and all will be sold over the next 3 days. There's no reserve on any of the items and no limit on the interest of prospective buyers who will be travelling across Australia for some of the oldest and best car deals around. There's also been some international interest, particularly when most of the vehicles are of American, English and European make. An interesting irony to the largest veteran car collection is that most of them were spotted in backyards and dumping grounds from the air, in a light aircraft affectionately called the Spotter. Organisers are expecting a large crowd for the 3-day auction, the highlight to be on Sunday when the oldest and most valuable vehicles go under the hammer.
Car enthusiast Chas Haddon spent a lifetime acquiring this exceptional collection of vintage and early post-war vehicles. Now he is retiring and closing his Foster Museum. Haddon is selling the collection in an auction that has caused waves of excitement amongst car enthusiasts, both here and overseas. 160 vehicles in various states of restoration must be sold by the time the collection ends on Sunday. They range from the fairly common, like this 1928 Ford Model A, to the unusual, including this ancient Dennis fire engine. There is also an early Jaguar saloon to make your mouth water. For the motorist with a taste for adventure is this 1929 Buick Saloon, which looks like it belongs to a gangster movie and comes complete with its own bullet holes. With the official start of winter tomorrow, a group of Mayfield Rotarians and Katara Rover Scouts rolled up their sleeves and set to work organising fuel for the city's pensioners. The coal was donated by Coal and Allied, and divided into 45-kilo lots. Passers-by called in offering wood for the appeal, and tomorrow Newcastle's four-wheel drive clubs will be delivering the fuel. At this stage, more than 500 pensioners have registered for assistance, but the City Council expects the number to rise sharply once the cold weather sets in. Anyone wanting to donate fuel should ring the council on 262333. At the Farmers and Graziers Wool Store in Wickham, meanwhile, is an exhibition sure to have the children smiling. The third annual Toys, Hobbies, Arts and Crafts exhibition features more than 80 displays, including wooden toys, model cars, planes and trains. Organised by the Newcastle Central Lions Club to raise money for the Hunter Valley Ambulance Service, there is plenty to keep the toddlers fascinated. Today, the centre of attraction was NBN's Big Dog. The exhibition continues tomorrow.
Was born in England, and today friends at the Hawkins Masonic Nursing Home in Edgeworth gathered to celebrate the birthday of their oldest resident. Immigrating from London with her husband, Louise spent most of her life at Toronto until she moved to the Lodge 12 years ago. Telegrams were received from the Queen, the Governor of Australia, the Premier and other dignitaries, all congratulating Louise on her achievement. She says there's no special secret to her longevity, but a happy and healthy lifestyle could have contributed, and then there's a rumour that Louise doesn't mind the odd drop or two of champagne. If that's the case, then there'll be a few more corks popping tonight for Mrs. Livingston, I presume.
The argument over the route of the F3 centres on three alternatives: the original planned route passing to the west of Barnsley and the east of West Wallsend, the present route passing to the southeastern corner of Barnsley, and a third route to the west of West Wallsend. The original route was abandoned when mining companies complained that it would prevent the mining of major coal reserves. The main purpose of the meeting was to give council members details of the three alternatives so that council can make a submission to the environmental impact statement now being prepared. DMR Divisional Engineer Alistair Curl told the meeting that all alternatives are still being considered. He said the EIS may be ready for publication by the end of July, and a decision will hopefully be made by October. Mayor Alderman Jeff Pasterfield said it would be ridiculous to see the freeway left unfinished, and a decision must be made soon. He told me he will be pushing for an alternative to the Barnsley route.
We would look for an alternative and make that as a proposal.
That'd be an alternative to the route that goes through Barnsley?
Yes.
I'm Matthew Clark. Members of the Sydney Swans were in the region today for a series of school coaching clinics. The visit is part of the Swans policy to promote the game at a junior level in this state, and so that in future years the Swans will really be a team representing New South Wales.
Join Ray Deneen and Anna Manzoni for all the news tonight at 6.
Hello, I'm Mark Warren. Here at Hexham Engineering, workers are being taught about the possible health risks associated with smoking. The lectures are part of the company's ongoing health and occupational safety training program and are being run by the Newcastle-based Quit for Life group.
Join Ray Deneen and Anna Manzoni for all the news tonight at 6.
In their French blue uniforms, members of the Girls' Brigade sang their way into the hearts of shoppers. The Brigade is an international organisation for girls aged between 6 and 18 that began in London at the turn of the century. In New South Wales, the Brigade began in 1940, and today there are 137 companies statewide attached to churches. As the girls showed last night, the Brigade aims to give them spiritual, social and physical education. The Brigade has begun a fundraising campaign to finance its Camp Karingal for handicapped members and to pay for a promotional video for television. It seems the Girls' Brigade wants to remind us all of its good work.
Randall, congratulations on being confirmed as part of the crew, you two fellas. I guess it's pretty hectic as the racing gets really tight and tough.
Very. Usually bottom marks are the hardest when you're coming down under spinnaker, and they get quite close, and then you've got to round, you've got to put another sail up, put your headsail up, and then start to go back up onto the wind, and you've got to drop your spinnaker, get it nicely packed away, and then get the boat back in order, and coming into those bottom marks can be pretty hairy sometimes.
The boats aren't that much difference, it's just the crews and the tacticians and the helmsmen that'll finally make that little bit of difference, that slickness in movement on the boat, the quicker tack change, the quicker sail change, the bottom rounding. I think that'll make the difference more than what the boats actually will.
How many syndicates have we got now? I'm like everyone else, I think. I'm a little confused.
Sid Fisher's got one down in Sydney. Kevin Parry's got these Kookaburras, the South Australians and ourselves. So there's 4 syndicates with, I think it's about 7 boats in all.
Right. And can we beat the challengers? Do we know that much at this stage of the game?
Well, we just, before we came here for our break, we sailed against the South Australians who were trialling against the British challenge. Now they were sailing very well against the British in varied conditions, and we did the South Australians in what 6-0. So I think we're doing it. You know, first of all we've got to beat the defenders, and then we go for the challenges.
One at a time, one hurdle at a time.
Exactly.
The Black Diamonds came up against 4 other leagues from the state's Northern Division at the number 1 sports ground today. This year's country championship has a new format, with the state divided in 2 and the top team from the north playing the best from the south to decide the champion. The Black Diamonds were in good touch today and showed much of the form that won them last year's New South Wales country title. At this stage they are the short favourites to win the Northern Division, and on today's results it would seem they should meet the North Coast in the grand final tomorrow afternoon. Both those teams were undefeated, with Newcastle leading the way on percentages. But the North Coast showed great form in their final game today, scoring the highest score of the day and showing they are a chance.